not this year, but next year. Yellow perch, jumbos, but you gotta find them. The abundance is low. If you can dial it in, and some people can. I've seen coolers full of 2-pound perch from Willard. Some people can do it. If you can find them, they're there and they're big. Smallmouth bass, like I said, we don't monitor the adults, but if that spawn is an indication of anything, that there should be a good year class of at least 1 or 2 year classes of a smallmouth coming up. Gizzard shad, again, booming. I mean, I heard reports of people just in the inlet, South Marina Inlet, just looking silver. I mean, they're just everywhere right now. And again, that's all just driven by those warmer water temperatures we had this year, where they did not die off.
Any comment on bluegills?
Bluegills are the same situation as crappies. We don't monitor them. Habitat is a big issue for crappies, bluegills, and it just doesn't, we don't have it unless we have high water. So my recommendation is if you find crappies, bluegills, hit it while you can, because it's probably not going to stick around. So get it while you can. And you know, a lot of people will ask, well, let's get more habitat in there. Willard's so shallow. We have a lot of restrictions from Bureau of Reclamation, dam operations, things like that, water user groups that restrict our ability to do a lot of nearshore habitat. Because Willard's so shallow, it gets tricky. There's some rock reefs out there that we placed 10 years ago or so, but that's kind of the limit of what we are allowed to do unless some serious changes happen from a federal standpoint. So this all might sound pretty good right now, and you know, like was said, fishing at Willard was really great this last year, and I don't expect a whole lot to change other than the fact that there's a lot of shad that you're going to have to sift through, but a lot of shad also means you're going to have probably relatively fat fish because they were able to eat all winter long. But Willard is arguably probably one of our most complex systems in at least the northern region, if not, you know, the state outside of, you know, the Gorge, Strawberry, Powell, stuff like that. It's shallow, it has water level fluctuations, it has a lot of predatory fish, it has a forest species that can be really prolific and reproduce a lot. It's a really dynamic system. So while this all might sound great, I'm gonna talk about maybe some of the warning signs that we're seeing at Willard, and maybe some of the changes that we want to do with it. So I know this looks like a lot. I'll walk you through it. This is a measure of year class strength. So year class would be 1 year of fish that were reproduced that year, and this is a measure of how big that year class is. So anything below 1 is considered a weak year class or a poor year class. Anything above 0 is considered a strong year class. And so this is looking at walleye and wiper all the way back to 1980. And you can see both species just have never really pulled off a strong year class in Willard. A lot of that's probably driven by the fact that it's an artificial reservoir. Those fish were introduced. There's a lot of factors that play into the historical reasons. And so we could kind of break this up into 3 different parts. So this first part, looking at the early years, we have both species weak, but they have this positive relationship, right? Where they basically follow the same trend. Both those, if one goes up, the other goes up. If one goes down, the other goes down. And then we introduced gizzard shad. So they were introduced 1990. By this 1997, they were pretty well established, reproducing, quite abundant. And we see kind of this shift where wipers start to become dominant, where they're utilizing that gizzard shad source, and then walleye declining as a result. So one species started to over-dominate and outcompete the other species. And then we started our walleye spawn. So another fairly big change that Willard saw. So walleye spawn and stocking started in 2014. And here we now are seeing the opposite trend. So walleye started to increase, wiper started to decrease. until these last few years, where we're starting to see both of those species increase. In fact, for walleye, 2023 was our biggest year class we've ever seen in the system. And that's the fish that you all were catching last year and will catch this year. Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, the viper are sterile, so that would be, seeming in my head, would be more controlled by the introduction of them to the body than necessarily what this chart may or may not be showing us.
It's possible. I mean, stocking trends would have a huge impact on abundance, right? If they're sterile, they can't reproduce. Only what we put in would be that. I don't have historical stocking data, so I can't shed light on if that's true or not. My stocking data starts around 2002. So why they did so well here, if that truly is stocking, maybe we were stocking at elevated rates. I don't have that information, but it's possible, certainly, yeah.
What's the reason for sterile?
They're hybrids fish. So just because they're hybrid, they are naturally sterile. So they do not have the genetic capability to reproduce them. Yep.
So I took it when you said booming, you're talking booming in size and weight.
Booming in size
weight
and abundance,
weight.
yeah. Like that's the dominant fish that I expect to be caught this year. All right, our second warning sign that we're starting to see is looking at growth. And so I apologize, I tried to convert everything to inches for you all. We in science talk in metric, and this is the one figure I forgot to convert. But for reference, about 500 millimeter fish is roughly about a 20 inch fish, sorry. And so if we look at our two different growth rates, this is for walleye. If we look at this blue line here, this is pre-stocking. And so we saw those fish maybe not growing as fast as what we do right now, but those fish were living to a much longer age. Versus 2023, 2024, when we last collected samples to do this, those fish were growing at an elevated rate, but they're not living as long. So this is a bit concerning because where are these older fish, right? Like a 4-year-old fish is about 20 inches, but then everything above 20 inches is starting to disappear. And we saw that even before we started stocking, and there's some recruitment variability, right? Year class strength. Walleye tend to be very, very finicky. They can boom, they can bust. They're cyclic. So some of that could be that, but since we've shifted to stocking, there should be maybe a little bit more stability where we're having consistent stocking rates. There's environmental factors that play into that in terms of their survivability. Yeah.
How does one know the age of a walleye fish?
I age them.
Okay, that was like saying that I do it because I know it.
No, so we can actually, so their dorsal spine, which is their dorsal fin, which is their top fin, so they're a hard rayed fish. So we can actually clip those fish, or those spines, off the fish, embed it in epoxy, and take a thin section of it, look at it under a microscope, and you can actually see rings, almost like you are aging a tree, if you've ever seen a picture of that. So every year has a ring that you can count then to figure out how old that fish is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have thousands of walleye spines in storage from Willard that we have aged. That drives all this data. So this is a bit concerning, right? Like we want those older fish present in the population. Those are the fish that are going to go big. Those are the fish that are going to reach that trophy status. If you're someone who likes to eat walleye, personally, myself, I want those 15-inch fish. I want smaller fish because I think they taste better. But not everybody's that way, right? So some people like to trophy fish. Some people want to catch that big honking 10-pound walleye. And right now, it's not there, and that's a concern.
I got a question real quick.
Yes.
Do you believe that the big fish create big fish, since you're a biologist? So like a 30-inch walleye, which don't see very often, but do they create?
How about that? I'll get back to your question in a second, and later. All right, our third warning sign is just increased use. So this is a lot of points on this map of Willard, and we've actually started to look at anonymous mobile location data to do some of our studies on use of waters, and so this is a week's worth of data from the middle of June last year, or July, January, so middle of winter. No ice on Willard, but that there were still 444 unique phones that were pinged on Willard in 1 week. And that equates to over 7,501 different events from those phones. That's a tremendous amount of use on a single body of water in the winter. Almost flabbergasting, right? Like that's incredible. And that's a concern, right? Our population's increasing, our use of warm water fisheries is increasing. How can we make this sustainable? How can we support all this increased use, all this increased harvest? This is a big concern. So what did we start to change? So like I said, I started in 2022. Since I started, I nearly doubled our walleye quota. So here on this top part is walleye. The orange bar is our stocking quota. The blue bar is the number of fish that we put in. And if there's dashes through it, that means we met our quota, or we did not meet our quota. So solid bars are good things, dash bars are bad things. And so you can see we struggled prior to meet our walleye quota. And there was a lot of that was getting the spawn in place. They were trying to figure out how to make triploid walleye, which are sterile walleye that go into other bodies of water. And so there was a lot of trial and error that killed a lot of fish. And unfortunately, Willard took the brunt of some of that. But since then, we've been able to meet our quota, and we've been able to meet it at that elevated rate. So going from 1 million fish to 2 million fish, in some years it's 2.5 million fish. And those are stocked at fry, which are about 5 days old. And so they still have a yolk sac, just like an egg has a yolk. A fish can have a yolk when they're freshly born, and that's what they feed off of until they can switch to an external food source. So we stock them when they still have that yolk sac to try to increase survivability. So that's been a game changer, having a consistent, reliable source of walleye stocking. Wiper stocking, we did the same thing. I took that quota from 250,000 to 1 million. So we just have been stocking the crap out of Willard. We've been putting a lot of fish in there. Part of that is to see what sticks, and in some sense it's throwing pasta at the wall to see what works. Yeah.
Is there a point of overstocking?
Absolutely.
To hurt the bigger fish?
Absolutely, yep. So you can stockpile fish too. You can have too many small fish, which increases density, increases competition. And so this plan was in place to do for 3 years. This is not our long-term quota, but we wanted to see, we saw that negative relationship between wiper walleye. When one species did well, the other declined. And so what happens if we stock both at really high rates? Are we gonna see that negative relationship where they decrease, one decreases, one increases, or are we gonna see them go together? We actually saw them go together in this case, but probably not sustainable. I'll hit on that. I also abandoned our 2-inch stocking. I know it's kind of tough for people in the back and on the side, but as long as I have data, we've never met our 2-inch stocking quota. And I said, why? Let's get rid of this. There's no sense in trying to do this if we're never going to meet it. And so we took these fish, we put them here as fry because we've had great success with fry in the walleye. Why can't we do the same for wiper? And we've had great success with wiper fry as well. And then some of that quota became 8-inch fish. So they're about 7-8 inches. So there's 5,000 of those, and those are our catchable fish right away. Or at least fish that would be less vulnerable to being eaten and would grow into a catchable size fish. So there's kind of those two different strategies with wiper stocking that we have now implemented at Willard. And we also now stock fry by boat. So I have all sorts of coolers on our boat. I run those fish out into the middle of Willard in the middle of the night and dump those fish in the water. The rationale behind that is the wind will help disperse them. You don't have this kind of hot spot. You know, if we dump fish off at the boat ramp, some school of wiper locks in on that and wipes out our entire year class of fry. That's a tasty treat and easy food source for them. So we dump them out in the middle. We dump them out in a lot of different locations. We don't just dump them all in one spot, and we do it at night so that there's no visual ability for those fish to kind of cue in, which seemingly has seemed to work well. All right, so future management actions. So two top predators at high abundance, is it sustainable? Like we talked about, probably not. You can certainly overstock, but we wanted to test out some of these new strategies, shifting our quotas around, stocking at night, stocking by boat, shifting from 2-inch to fry, things like that. We wanted to see what worked. And right now, it seems like everything that we're doing is working, but we've also had the right environmental conditions for it to work too. So that's an important consideration. So we need to figure out kind of what we can do going forward. That's probably going to be some sort of adaptive stocking strategy. Walleye will probably tend to get a bit more priority than wiper because it's our brood source, and we need that population to sustain other waters. So maybe it's every other year wiper get a high stocking rate, the next year it gets a lower stocking rate, try to balance some of that, keep it a little bit more sustainable. So maybe a little bit more variability. And then talking about regulation changes to protect and stabilize walleye, and that's kind of the second part of what I want to talk about. So what does this mean for you all? So the fishery is improving, in my opinion, but balancing these two top predators is going to be a challenge and will require a lot of continued adaptive management. Not being afraid to change things, not being afraid to try new things like we have done in the recent years, I think is going to be a really important part of Willard going forward. And you all participating too, giving me feedback, I set 24 nets out there, and sometimes that doesn't catch the fish that you're catching too. So, you know, I know people have been catching 26-inch walleyes out in Willard right now, but we don't see those fish in our nets. So, you know, building up this relationship where you all can provide me information is really useful too. I can do the data, I can do the analyses, that's not a hard part. I can do the technical side, but the relational side is probably more of a challenge for Willard than anything right now. Especially as we're talking about changing regulations and stocking strategies. So, I'm gonna shift gears. Hopefully that first part was what a lot of you came here to hear. The second part is gonna be what hopefully I can get some information out of you all going forward. And so this is gonna be kind of that regulation change modeling that I talked about. Don't worry, I'm gonna take a bit of a risk. I'm gonna talk about some modeling. Hopefully I won't bore you all. I'll try to keep it really high level. But I also wanted you all to see the rationale behind some of the regulation changes that we do. This type of work doesn't get done in a lot of places because we don't have the data and we don't have the expertise to do it in some of our regions. And so this is kind of a unique case where we've been able to employ some fairly sophisticated modeling to look at how can we optimize harvest and things like that. So the goal for this is harvest is an important tool, right? Fishery science, just like wildlife, harvest is important. You know, I can create a huge population of fish for you, but in order to keep that balance, some fish do need to be removed to thin that out. And so harvest is a really important thing, but can we optimize what that harvest rate is? And one of the big issues that we're seeing right now is a lot of our immature fish are actually being removed before they're reproducing. So, like I said, I want to eat a 15-inch walleye, But I'll show you in a little bit that 15-inch walleye isn't mature. So we put that investment into Willard to stock that fish, and it grows to 15 inches, but Willard's not getting any return on that investment right now. But the opposite side of that is we want to prevent stockpiling those smaller fish, right? So we're seeing really high growth rates in Willard, but we want to prevent there becoming too many small fish as well, which would then limit kind of the growth potential. So can we do more to protect our spawning walleye population? And so in fishery science, there's this term called BOFs. And you asked about females, big old fat females. So fecund just means a lot of eggs. So highly fecund fish means it has a lot of eggs to produce and send in. So there's some truth to this, that you do need those big old fat females to sustain a population. And so can we do more to protect those fish? But I do want to just highlight some of the limitations and the data gaps that we have. So we don't have any recent creel data. So creel is just our angler opinion type surveys. So if you've ever been stopped at a boat ramp before, asked how long you've been fishing, how many people are fishing with you, how many fish have you caught, things like that, that's a creel survey. Our last creel at Willard was in 2010, and 2010 was not a good walleye year. And it was pre our walleye stocking as well. So I don't have a lot of data in that regard, which is really what we need to separate natural and fishing mortality, right? So I can estimate total mortality, so the total number of fish or the percentage of a population that dies from Willard every year, but I don't know how much of that is due to just natural mortality, so fish just either growing, not feeding enough, just natural causes of death, or when you all go fish Willard and you catch a walleye and you take it away, that's fishing mortality. So I can't separate those two right now, which is an issue. And we've also seen this population increase, right? And increased utilization. And so what is an accurate exploitation rate for Willard? How many people go out and fish Willard are actually taking fish home? And how many of those, what's the total number of fish being taken out right now? That's an unknown for us. So we talked about growth earlier. This is kind of the main driving source for a lot of these models are some of the parameters that come from this growth. It's the parameters that fit this line. And the biggest one that I want to talk about is called L infinity. And that's that maximum modeled length. So it's where those dashed lines are. It's kind of where this curved line plateaus and just doesn't really increase. So it's called asymptotic. So where it becomes asymptotic. So right now, L infinity for females is at 22 inches. And for males, it's at 18.8 inches. And so this is important because I can't model any sort of effects above that L infinity. So right now, any modeling change that I do for Willard in looking at regulations, I can't go above 22 inches. So I know there's fish above 22 inches, but I can't look at what might happen if fish above 22 inches are taken out. So everything is 22 inches and below. This also limits our ability to look at any sort of slot limit. So if you're familiar with regulations, you can have protected slot limits where there's no harvest within a certain range of lengths, or there's harvest slot limits where you can only harvest within that limit. But because I'm dealing with such a narrow length window, because we don't have those older, bigger fish in this analysis, the range just isn't there to look at it. So we can't look at a slot limit, which ultimately just leaves a minimum length. The other important thing is, remember, Willard is our brood source. And so this is looking at the length at which 50% of our fish are mature and reproducing. And so proportion, so 0, 1 is the scale. Think of 1 as 100%, 0 as 0%. This line that goes across is the point at which those fish are 50% mature. And so for males, we're at right about 18 inches, and for females, we're right about 20 inches. And so that's kind of the point where we want to make sure that those fish are staying there so that we're getting that return on investment like I talked about. We want to make sure that we're keeping enough fish in Willard so that there is that spawning population to one, not only sustain the stocking densities, these elevated stocking densities that we have at Willard, which keeps Willard alive, but also supplies fish for 8 other waters throughout the state. And there's a lot of interest in growing that number too. So this is an important consideration. All right, so this is actually what some of the model results look like. Yield on this side axis, y-axis, is the number or the weight of fish being taken out. So this would be like an accumulation. Don't worry about the numbers, they are irrelevant. What you're looking at is kind of the change in this curve. And so to do this, looking at different minimum length limits, I modeled a 10-inch minimum length limit, which basically represents unlimited harvest. So a 10-inch fish is an age 0 fish. You're probably not catching many 10-inch fish, but what would happen basically if we didn't have any restrictions at all? And then going up to 21 inches, which is close to that maximum length that we can model, and this would be like a super over-regulated population in a sense. And so when we look at that under-regulated population, you can see so exploitation increasing, 100% exploitation would be every fish is removed from that population. 0% exploitation is you all suck at fishing, you can't catch anything for a damn. So what we have here is as exploitation increases, the higher weight of fish is being removed, right? That makes sense. More people are out fishing, people are fishing more efficiently, more fish are being taken out. But once it peaks and starts coming down, that's what we would consider as growth overfishing. So that's where too many fish are actually being taken out, where then there's not enough fish to meet these elevated exploitation rates. So that's a bad thing. So unregulated, bad. We don't want that. Then we have this situation where we can overregulate the population, and then we end up with, we can meet those higher exploitation rates, but we're stockpiling fish, and that's a bad thing too, right? Where we're having not enough harvest and too many small fish sticking around, which ultimately limits their ability to grow. So that's a bad thing too. We don't want that. So then we can look at a lot of these middle kind of lengths. So going from 16, 17, 18 to 19, you can see they increase, and they never reach that growth overfishing. Those are good things. That's what we want, right? So those are good options for a minimum length, where the more people that are out fishing, the more weight that's being removed, but we're never taking too much from it. Those are sustainable levels of harvest. So 16, 17-inch minimum length limit, good thing. That's what this is saying as an optimal length limit for it. So basically a minimum length then would be nothing below that length could be harvested, and everything would have to be catch and release below that length. You would only be allowed to harvest above 16 inches, 17 inches, whatever it might be. But we have competing interests, right? So you all want to go out and catch fish. I want you to catch fish. I want you to catch the biggest fish possible. I want to do my job right and make sure that Willard's performing. But I also need to balance those interests of it's our statewide source for walleye. And so this is another analysis looking at the number of eggs that would be available in the population under those different minimum length limits. And so if you go to 10, so remember that's that unregulated, you can see we fished the population extinct, right? So there's no eggs available once you start getting above 60% exploitation. That's a bad thing. Over-regulating it though keeps a lot of those, it allows those fish to grow big, it allows those fish to mature, it allows those fish to reproduce. That then number goes up, we have a lot more eggs available in the system. That's a good thing. So unregulated, high harvest, no reproductive potential, that. Over-regulating it, low harvest, more reproductive potential, that's a good thing, right? But if you think about the last slide, you can have too much of a good thing. You know, you have too many fish that stick around in that system, not enough harvest, that's a bad thing. So what's a sustainable level of harvest? It's probably somewhere in between these two. So something above 19 inches minimum length limit, that's probably a good metric to put it at. But we stock fish there, so this becomes less important, right? Because we artificially produce fish, we stock them, that increases survivability. We aren't solely relying on those fish to reproduce and those embryos to survive along the rocky dikes in the inlet where they're likely to get sedimented and die and have a lot more variability. So while this is important, it's probably one step down on importance. So then just to kind of summarize, so we kind of have these three different groups. The first one being that 16, 17 inch minimum length, which optimizes the yield that you all get to take home and make sure that you guys are harvesting the best fish possible, but it reduces that fecundity, so it reduces the number of eggs available in the system to support it. 18 to 20 inch minimum, it's needed for reproduction, right? Those males aren't even reaching maturity until 18 inches. At least 50% of those males aren't reaching, some of them are, at a smaller length, but 18 inches is where at least half of those fish are maturing. So that 18 to 20 inch reaches our males and our females getting to maturity, but it does lower the yield that you all get to take home. So it does limit in a smaller capacity the reproductive, the growth potential that Willard could see if we had a smaller length limit. And then 21 inches or greater, it's poor growth potential, and we can meet our reproductive potential at a smaller length limit anyway. So throw that one out, right? Not even a real consideration. So to look at what our existing regulations are at Willard for walleye, so we have 6 fish as a daily harvest limit. So our statewide limit is 10. Willard already has a reduced limit of 6 fish. And then we have our 1 over 24 inches. So you can only take 1 fish over 24. Those I do not expect to change with this. But what we are proposing is putting in an 18-inch minimum length limit. So anything below 18 inches would need to be released and put back as a catch and release. That would kind of meets the middle ground here, right? We have those two competing interests, where maybe you're not quite getting as much of a yield on the biggest fish that you possibly can, but it's keeping enough of those smaller fish in the system that we're getting possibly some of those bigger fish, older year classes, helps allow for that system to kind of be a little bit more sustainable. So this year is our review year. We do regulation changes every 2 years. So 2026 is our review cycle, which is a lot of motivation for why I'm here in front of you all today. I want to hear what you think. Our last regulation cycle, we got slaughtered. And a lot of that was, I don't think we did enough of this. So I'm here. I want to hear what you all think. I provided some of the data, some of the rationale behind what's driving it, but I want to hear what you all think from people who actually fish it. And then that regulation would, if approved this year, would go into effect in 2027. So, building on top of that, some future monitoring that does need to go into effect if we are to put this regulation in place is, I need creel data. I need something that shows what you all are catching, how many fish you're catching, how much effort you're putting in to catch that. I tried to do that in 2025. I got denied funding for creel. Money just wasn't there. Creels are expensive, and Willard's big, and it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of manpower to do a creel at Willard, and it got denied. So, like I said earlier, our last creel was in 2010, and that data just does not represent the Willard that we have today. It was pre-stocking, wiper were down in abundance, or walleye were down in abundance, wiper were booming. It just doesn't match what we need for walleye. So I'm pursuing some alternatives for 2027, and most likely will have to be some sort of electronic survey. So think of it as like a trip card for you all. Some of you older folks in the room might remember like the mail-in cards that you used to do. You'd fill it out, mail it in to us, and we tabulate it. We can go to something similar to that, but electronic. So 2027, you probably see like QR codes up at the boat launches, at the fish cleaning stations. That's just asking you, hey, scan this. Tell me how many hours you fished today. How many fish did you catch? What species were you targeting? All that is incredibly useful data for me to continue to refine some of these models and think about how can we continue to optimize it. Yeah.
Did you say that was on, is it already up? No.
I don't have the funding for it yet. I also have a baby due in July, so I've tried to scale back a little bit of some of these extra projects. But 2027 would be the year, yeah.
You know, it seems most regulations, maybe in most states, have you catch so many fish and only one over.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of going so many fish, but only one under?
Yeah, so, I mean, you look at the Midwest and there's waters where you can, sometimes there's zero harvest, right? Like you can't take any fish out of it. Sometimes you can only take 1-2 fish out of it. I mean, there's some really restrictive harvest limits on some of those waters. I don't have the data to look at how can we optimize that. And that's where this comes in, right? So I need that angler data to look at, okay, you went out there, you fished for 4 hours. How many fish did you catch in 4 hours, right? Or you caught 4 fish, you caught 6 fish, you caught 2 fish. Okay, so now I know what proportion of our population is actually catching 4 fish or 6 fish. So what happens if I scale that from 6 fish to 4 fish that you can only take home? That means 2/3 of our population is already meeting that, so I'm only affecting 1/3 of our population that's fishing out there. So I need more data to look at bag limits. And that's something that certainly could be tied into this in future years. Yeah.
So as we, as a club, if we get that data, where do we send it?
So that'll be on me to like build some infrastructure, right? So I need to work with our Salt Lake office, our headquarters, to build that infrastructure. It could be as simple as like a Google form for all I know. But we have people in place that do these things. It's just on me to request it. Oh, and this table is just showing what our 2010 creel looks like. So you can see wiper, number harvested, almost 7,000 fish, walleye, less than 1,500 fish. It only represented 12.5% of our total catch that year in 2010. So it's not useful data for us. Knowledge isn't perfect. Modeling merely offers a glimpse, right? I can't tell you definitively this is what it is. It's just a glimpse, right? But so this is where being adaptive becomes important. As I gather more information, you all give me feedback. I collect data myself, put this all together. Being flexible, that's important. So, yeah.
What's a creel funding, what's it cost?
For Willard, probably 60,000. Yeah, it's expensive. It's big, right? So we need people at boat ramps, but there's a lot of shore anglers too. So we need people that are roving, is what we call it, where they're walking specific transects of shoreline, interacting with people at those bodies of water. We need to make sure we're covering enough weekdays, weekends, AM, PMs, have all those stratifications in place to make sure that we're not biasing our data in any way. So it adds up a lot. Yeah.
Utah has a dedicated hunter. Why can't you get some of those people to do that crewing?
So our Northeast region has used dedicated hunters to do creel surveys on the Strawberry River. It could be an option. I think the hardest part is I have the information on my laptop, but I mean, we're talking thousands of hours, like people hours. It adds up a lot. So a dedicated hunter, they're looking for 10, 12 hours every year, something like that. So when you're looking at a smaller system, a smaller body water, a river, something like that, you can do it, but Willard's too big. All right, and models are only as good as the input data. So the better data I have, the better these models get. And that all feeds back into what we were all just talking about right there. So the more information I can get from you all, the better these models get. I need to go out and collect more samples to basically look at the effectiveness of these possible regulations. So collecting those dorsal spines, aging those fish, seeing if we're seeing any of those fish move into those older year classes or not. And then one possible concern is if you fish for walleye, you know that they're not the most aggressive, right? You go trolling for them, half the time you don't know that they're on or not. And sometimes you're dragging those fish for a while. And so if I'm asking you to throw back fish below 18, are we gonna negate a lot of these effects anyways because they're just gonna be dead anyways once you release them? So that's certainly a consideration, something that we are well aware of, and something that may be a driving force to change or maybe even walk back on some of these things in the future. Another option would be a partial seasonal length limit, right? Where only in the spring, when most of our effort is on Willard anyways, March, May, April, June, when those water temperatures are colder, those fish can tolerate that catch and release better. You know, that's where you need to release those fish. Come summer, when water temps are high and they might die anyways, take them home. So something to monitor, something to keep an eye on. Okay, that's Willard. I did want to just bring up some of the other regulations that I'm proposing in the region. Manaway, we're proposing to reduce the bluegill limit from 50 to 15. Causey Reservoir, adding a bonus kokanee limit. So right now, you can take home up to 6 kokanee at Causey. We're proposing to increase that to 8. That would still be included in your total trout limit, but basically you have 2 additional kokanee that you can take home. So the goal of that is to try to drive down some of that density there and hopefully get bigger fish. And then Newton Reservoir, looking at removing the catch and release, where then you're able to harvest a fish out of Newton that's above 40 for tiger muskie. Both of those fish are from Pine View, so not Newton. Don't get any hopes up.
False advertising.
Yeah, so both of these fish were caught this last year. This guy right here, he caught 2 50-inch muskies out of Pine View. Unfortunately, he did pass away, and this was kind of his last hurrah. He had a fatal disease, so a lot of effort went into making sure that guy caught 2 50-inch fish before he passed away, and he did it. And then this is a 48-inch fish that we electrofished in the fall. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. My contact information's up there. I welcome phone calls, emails, whatever you guys need. I'm an open door. So hopefully you can have some discussion, or if you don't feel comfortable discussing it here, reach out to me afterwards.
I was just gonna say, do you care if we do that creel survey every time we go out, just send you like, hey, this is what we
Please
did.
do.
This is caught 6 fish, you know, and give the length and everything. And then
Yeah, no, every time you go up is exactly what we want.
Okay.
So if you did it once, that's great. If you did it every time, that's even better.
So you're doing clips on the fins, do you do a swab at all?
A swab?
Like the largemouth, now they're swabbing those and sending those in and getting data off of that.
For what? For aging?
Aging, size, everything about that fish is in that DNA.
You can't tell age from DNA.
Okay.
So you would still need some sort of physical structure, but I mean that's the beauty of warm water fish is they're hard raid, right? They're not trout. They're not soft raid. If I want to age a trout, I gotta kill it to get internal bones. Warm water fish, I can do it all non-lethal. So bass, walleye, perch, whatever, wiper, whatever you want.
Scale?
Scales work up to a specific age. So younger fish, scales work great. They're easy. There's no prep work for it. You just sandwich it between a microscope slide and you can age it. But it's called cutting over. So eventually, once you start getting above like 4 or 5 years old, it starts to get really biased. You can't age above that.
I know you guys, your resources are spread crazy thin. I know that keyboard warriors are the loudest ones and the most annoying. with the broodstock basically being from Willard and that being like the source of it, I know a lot of people talk about people going up and snagging walleyes this time of year. I know it's hard to call in and say, okay, there's 30 trucks here, I don't know which one this person belongs to. With it being kind of like the crown jewel, is that something this time of year you've looked at either closing off areas like tributaries where they're spawning, or having people come through and do more random checks during the high time, like right now for the walleye?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a talk about Willard if someone didn't ask about the inlet. It previously was closed, right? My two predecessors before me opened it back up. And there's a lot of competing thoughts that go into that, right? So if you don't have a boat, it's really hard to fish for walleye, except during the spawn. When those fish are up at the shore, you can actually target them. And so in some sense, we wanna make sure that those opportunities are available for people that don't have a boat to still go out and be able to catch walleye. And the inlet is a great resource for that. There are people that take advantage of that. In Snag, there was an investigation a few years ago where people were taking fish and selling them at markets. I helped provide fish that were DNA tested that then basically convicted those individuals. So there are certainly a handful of people that ruin it for the rest of us, right? How do we balance that? That's hard. My job is to make sure you all have whatever resources you need to go on fish, access, fish to catch, and the inlet provides that access for some people. I always tell people the best thing you can do is call it in. You know, if you can tail it back to a license plate, which, as you said, is hard sometimes, that's even better, because that gives our law enforcement officers the ability to track those people down and monitor them, investigate them, have a conversation with them, whatever it needs to be. That's, if you can provide some sort of traceable evidence, that's the best thing you can do. We do have our officers that go out. They say that they don't see a lot. You all say that you do. So that's a hard spot for me to get put in the middle of. But what I will say is, when you think about putting in an 18-inch minimum length limit in place, that potentially gives our law enforcement officers more motivation to go out there and patrol it more, right? Because it gives them another citable source. It's not just, you snaked that fish, well, how do you know you snaked it, right? Maybe you hooked its lip, maybe you hooked its tail. Like, sometimes that's hard to prove. But if someone's out there and they've got a cooler full of 15-inch fish, that's an instant citation. So I'd say that that's certainly not the priority for this regulation, but it is maybe an alternative motive for them. And that's something that I need to meet with law enforcement and talk to them about, you know, maybe putting some extra attention on it once this goes into place, as best as we can. Yeah.
I heard that, the fish that go up into that river, or right into the canal, whichever one you wanna call it, when they spawn in there, it's in muddy, silty bottom, so the eggs never hatch.
Right.
So,
There's really poor survival. There was a study done, a marking study done in 2010, something around there, to look at how much survival we had out of the inlet, and it was very little.
the ones that spawn out on the main lake.
Yeah.
have better
I mean, look at the water coming into the inlet right now. It's chocolate milk. So those fish spawn in the rocks. They deposit their eggs. They get fertilized. Then all that sediment gets flushed in. That sediment lands on top of those eggs. It then suffocates them. They don't have that ability to pull oxygen out of that water through the membrane of the egg, and that kills it. So yeah, it's an issue. Yeah.
I'm gonna sound like a crybaby.
It's all right.
An hour and 10 minutes each way for me, 65 bucks in gas, park fees, to throw back 5 or 6, 16 or 17 inches.
I know,
stings.
I know. Like I said, those are the fish I wanna eat too.
But it will stop the guide boats from taking out 36 and 42 walleye a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm torn.
Mhm. I hear ya. I understand the dilemma. There's two.
What's the average size of the people are catching now, do we know?
What was the average size of what?
What's the average size anglers are catching?
Again, I don't have that creel data to say.
16
I-
to 17s for me.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I mean, knowing what strong year classes are present in Willard right now, it would, yeah, probably be those 15, 16, 17s.
What we're gonna ask is I'd hate for it to turn like a strawberry where if you wanna catch cutthroat, but all the fish you catch, you gotta throw back. So, for sure.
Yeah, but I will say, you know, you may feel the hurt on this, well, maybe you won't. I mean, it depends on how many fish you throw back this year. But yeah, there may be a year where you feel it more than the rest, right? Until those fish can grow into those older harvestable sizes. The whole point of this is to reduce the number of fish, small fish that are being taken out, right? Because that's where all of our signs are pointing to, that there's too much harvest on small fish. And we need those fish to go in to those bigger size classes. But if we can get more of those fish, if there's more proportion of the population in those fish, then there's more of those bigger fish for you all to catch too. So yeah, maybe you do have to throw back a couple fish that first year, but the next year, those fish that you threw back are gonna be harvestable. I'll get to you.
Are you considering the regulations on other bodies of water for other walleye?
The only other walleye water that I manage is Echo. And I don't see that moving away from the state-wide reg.
So first, I'd like to say thank you so much for coming. This is great. And inclusive in that is, I like the fact that you are trying things. I like people who try things because, you know, while I may not like it, you gotta break a few eggs to learn and gather new or different data. And so I like that you're trying stuff. That's better than, you know, just trying to keep it going. With that in mind, you're asking for some creel data. Why not try and get people to go to the Fishing Reports DNR webpage and fill out the creel request there?
So you're referring to like Fish Utah?
Yeah, it's massively underutilized.
It is underutilized. The issue with that would be I'm not getting as much information as I need with that. So yes, you can go on and you can report, you can rate it, you can list, I caught 6 walleye, but I don't know if that took you an hour to catch 6 walleye or 8 hours to catch 6 walleye.
I'm guessing there's funding issues with updating that with what you actually need.
Yeah, I think to go through that process to update that would probably be more time consuming than just building out some sort of Google form or report that can just be listed on QR. I think that's probably less time intensive and less financially costed. Yeah.
As long as you're here, could you give us 30 seconds on Echo?
On Echo, yes. All I can really tell you on Echo is we will be out there this spring. One of the biggest issues we have with Echo is the walleye that we are catching. I'm assuming you're referring to walleye. Okay. The walleye that we are catching, I don't know if they're naturally reproduced or if they are stocked sterile fish. So when walleye were illegally introduced in Echo, the action that was taken at that time was to flood the population with triploid fish, which are sterile. That then limits the reproductive capability of those fertile fish that are in the population because they're trying to spawn with fish that can't. And so then those fish just never are fertilized or they never produce eggs. And so that was the mentality or the action that was taken at that time. We no longer stock with triploid walleye there. And so we have that mixed population right now. And so I can go out and I can find walleye in our nets. I don't find a lot of walleye in our nets, but I can find them, but I don't know if they're naturally reproducing or not right now. So this upcoming year might shed a little more light on that. But it's probably still gonna be a bit mixed right now. But if we start seeing, 8-10 inch walleye, I can confidently then say that those are naturally reproduced walleye. Yeah.
I like to target multiple species. The water bodies that you oversee, I fished like 4 of them last year. Do you want krill information for all those different reservoirs? Would that be beneficial, or are you really only worried about Willard?
We're just worried about Willard right now.
Just so before I spam you with all that stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but northern region reservoirs have not had a lot of creel in the past decade or so. So it's something, like I said earlier, creels are very expensive, and there was a big issue with that. But we can still get useful information without having to go do a full-blown creel where I hire someone independently and they go and spend half their time out on Willard every month and all these things. So you may see more things like this roll out in other waters, but right now it's just Willard.
Okay. So like you don't want us to send you just emails about the different ones of like, well, we got some of that angler feedback on those other water bodies.
I mean, you can always send me things. I'll take whatever you want, but right now Willard is our big priority. Yeah.
So,
It's also
I know
8:30.
from anglers, you get a lot of complaints that can come your way. Based on what complaints you get, what do you wish us anglers realized or understood? Yeah, I know that's a loaded question.
He's only one guy.
Yeah, I'm only one guy. I manage 20 plus reservoirs myself. I'm the only, northern region is the only region that has someone like me that's dedicated just to reservoirs. Most other regions are split between reservoirs, streams, things like that. But we have so many waters in our northern region that my position requires my sole attention towards that. So yeah, I'm split, right? Like I do a lot of work with our Muskies Inc. group, doing research, doing projects with them. And I always have to tell them too, like, muskies are one species that I manage. I've got so many other waters, I've got so many other species that I manage too. So while Willard is probably our biggest priority water in the region, yeah, I'm split so many other places too. Yeah.
It's been many years since I've been Willard, but I remember back in the day, the water skiing out there that could walk across the carp. What's the carp population in that? I've heard nothing.
They're there. I mean, we pick them up every now and then. But they haven't really become overabundant. It's not a Utah lake or anything like that. Like they're just there. I don't want to take all your time, so feel free to just cut me off, cut them off.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Shields closes at 9.
Yeah.
We still got 20 minutes.
And there's some club business we need
Start
to get
putting
to.
those million fry in Echo. Ship us all to Echo, so we leave your sub-18s alone. Win-win.
Yeah. No comment. All right.
Or strawberry, I don't mind.
Strawberry, yeah. I think some people would have heart attacks. Thank you all for the discussion, the comments. This is all really useful feedback, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.